Hey everybody, today Rahdo runs through the top games of 2012. Right? Okay, let's go. Now, the normal preamble I always do on these things, these are generally my favorite games of the year. They're not the best games of the year, just the ones that we enjoy the most. And 2012 was a fantastic year. To date, it has been the best year for board gaming, period, as far as we're concerned, based on the fact that there are more games in our top 10 and our top 20, and just in terms of like games we've rated at least an 8, that have come out in 2012 than any other year. Now, 2013 might surpass it. I don't really know. I've already played probably about half of the games of 2013 I'm going to be playing, and it's looking like 2012 might eke out 2013, but 2013 might make a setup, but we'll worry about that another day, because today it's all about the top 10 of 2012, starting with number 11 on our top 10 list, Snowdonia. Why am I going with 11? Well, it'll become obvious why, because I'm going to have to kind of skip number 7, but I'll get to that in a minute. So, but I'm happy, because actually it always kind of breaks my heart that Snowdonia just missed the top 10. 2012 was such an amazing year, and this is such an amazing game, and it didn't quite make it. So I'm more than happy to talk about it as kind of a honorable runner-up type thing, because number 7 is missing. Anyway, number 11, Snowdonia. This is a worker placement game, and 2012 had a lot of really kick-ass worker placement. And this one's no exception. The worker placement is pretty straightforward. You have 2 workers, sometimes 3, depending on if you get a train, depending on how you build your little track laying machine. And actually that's what this game is about. It is about building a rail line over the Snowdonia mountain in Wales. And when you get the board all laid out, the board itself represents the mountain, and you lay all these cards all the way around, and you start on one side and the game is over once you've made it all the way from one side to the other. And what you're doing every step of the way is using your workers to clear rubble off all of these cards so that track could be built on them. And you're really kind of in this really interesting race with your opponents, because if I'm the one who clears the rubble out of these couple of tracks, then the next player might be the one who actually gets the glory of building the rail, and all I've left with is a bunch of rubble. But you can use that rubble to build other stuff. So there's this real synergy between what you and everybody else is doing all the time, and that's really cool. But what's even cooler, probably the neatest thing about this game is, well, basically, it doesn't show it in the box, but the game comes with a bag that you're pulling cubes out of that represent different resources that are available to you, like iron and whatnot. And so every turn you pull some of those cubes out, and occasionally you will pull out, can you make out? You'll pull out these little white cubes. Those represent events, because in addition to all the players going their way over the mountain, there is another company that is represented by the game itself. And every time a white cube comes out, that other company moves farther forward on their progress track, because they're doing the same stuff we're doing. They're building buildings and clearing rubble and laying track. And so you get into a situation where you don't want to pull those white cubes, because every time you do, that other player, the really rich, successful company has the potential to steamroll you and all the other players, because they can go so much faster. And so the way you minimize that from happening is it's interesting, it's an anti-hoarding mechanism. This is a game where you are collecting resources and using them. And a lot of times in games like that, you want to collect a whole bunch of them, get all the resources, no one else can have them, and then you control that and you can eke them out. But in this game, the more you hoard resources, the more likely it is you're going to pull white cubes out of that bag, and you're going to hasten the end of the game. And that means you're not actually getting a chance to use all those cubes you stored. So there's this incredible tension in Snowdonia that you don't really see in a lot of other games, where you are racing each other, all the other players, but you're racing against the game itself. And that is very, very exciting, very tense. And it's just amazing every turn how much you can get done with only 2 workers. I mean, this is one of those games where by the time you've made it all the way over the mountain, you sit back and you say, wow, that's amazing what I did, and actually what we as a group did with just the tiniest amount of resources. We built our way. And now since then, this is a late 2012 game, a couple of expansions have come out for it that introduce new cards, new scenarios, new rules changes. So Snowdonia is not only just a great game, a very worthy game just in the box, but the designers continue to support it, put out a lot of new content, so it's kind of an evergreen game. Absolutely love it. Like I said, it was heartbreaking, so I'm happy it didn't make the top 10, because it was such a good year. So anyway, in our number 11, Snowdonia. Now moving on to number 10, on to the real list. Lords of Waterdeep. Now, for a lot of people, this made it much higher on their personal list. It's probably made it into a lot of #1 list for a lot of people, and made probably for a lot of people their crappiest game of the year. This is a very divisive game in 2012. Because, it's kind of you either loved it or hated it. And we're definitely, obviously it's our number 10, in the love it camp, because this game does an amazing job, an absolutely stellar job of introducing, really solid modern board game mechanisms, worker placement specifically, to anybody who would be quick. I mean, if you have somebody in your life who says, why do you play board games? Just come play video games with me. Video games are so much better. There's so much more life, there's so much more fun, there's so much more flavor. Get them to play Lords of Waterdeep, because that's what I've actually found the best use for this. I mean, I've worked in the video game industry. I have a lot of coworkers who are video game nuts who think I'm crazy to be playing this. They sit down, they even watch me play. I remember playing this at lunch, and everybody else was playing League of Legends or whatever over their lunch break, and they'd come in and say, well, what are you guys doing in there? That actually looks pretty cool. Could I play tomorrow? Because it's a Dungeons and Dragons setting game. It's a really straightforward worker placement, kind of a Kalis light, really, as you're using your workers and placing them, in buildings all over the city, so that you can gather cubes that represents warriors, thieves, clerics, and wizards, and you need those cubes to be able to complete quests that come up. Because you yourself are one of the Lords of Waterdeep, the shadowy figures who, get everybody in the right place at the right time to complete quests and score points. It's a very fast-moving game. There's a lot of tension. There's a lot of stuff to think about, but it's really accessible. Super accessible. Incredible gateway in that regard. And like I said, what's great about it is it's a gateway for the geeks in your life. I mean, you have to be really careful about gateway games that they attract people, and so Ticket to Ride, while it's a fantastic gateway game, a lot of people say, I don't care about trains. Why am I going to play this game with you? This is the game. If you have any video game fanatics, any geeks, anybody who loves Lord of the Rings, the movies, or Game of Thrones, the TV show. Who doesn't love one of those things? You bring this out and say, look, this is going to capture that experience, and we're going to sit around a table and we're going to have a fun time. That's what makes Lords of Waterdeep so amazing. Now, and there's one other thing I'll open up the box to say is amazing too. If you have the wherewithal, now the game comes with just a whole bunch of cubes. This is what's brown? Oh, this is a warrior. Brown ones. Yeah, brown ones are warriors. Comes with a bunch of cubes, and that's really, if anything you were to complain about, it's kind of a shame that you're building all these, big parties to go on quests and all that, but they just represented by a bunch of cubes. What you can do is, there's a user online, I'll put a link to it in the show notes, and you can contact him, because what he's done is, oh, come on, there we go. He has made a bunch of replacements for those cubes that are roughly the same size of a cube that are little adventuring meeples. Instead of a purple cube, you can have a little, oh, come on, I hear you, a little purple wizard. Oh, here you are, hi there. And a purple thief with double blades, and a purple thief, and instead of an orange cube, bring a little orange warrior. Using these instead of the cubes adds so much flavor and fun to the game. I think that pretty much kind of destroys the last vestige that anybody might have against this game, because instead of playing with little cubes, you're playing with these little cute things, and they're just so adorable, and you want to collect them all, and you want to send them on quests. Great game. Lords of Waterdeep, absolutely fantastic. One of the premier gateway games to get people a game in your life. If you've got friends or family who are geeky, just can't get it, just cannot understand why you keep playing board games, get this game and you'll make converts of them. That's why it's our number 10. On to number 9. Morels. This is a lovely little 2-player only card game from it was actually developed by a husband and wife team who developed this game because they wanted to play it themselves. And they've since created 2 Lantern games, and their focus is going to be nice, fun, portable, beautiful little games solely kind of for couples, for 2 players. And that's, and they were really, really successful. What this game is about is basically players going on a hike through the woods looking for mushrooms. Apparently this is something that people do. We don't. Foraging for mushrooms so they can cook them up with butter and cider and all that stuff to eat them and enjoy them. And and so it's a really simple set collection game where you lay out, come here you, I don't know, I should pull them out. Yeah, why not? You lay out all the cards. The cards are laid out, randomly laid out in a trail, and that represents the trail in the woods, leading off into the woods ahead of you. And you can see, and you're kind of at the end of the trail, and you can see, okay, well, there's, these mushrooms here, these mushrooms here, these mushrooms here, and what you're trying to do is you're trying to collect sets of matching mushrooms, and the more you can, the more points they're worth, because eventually what you'll have to do is, after you get so many, after you kind of overload with mushrooms, you will have to fry them up on a frying pan. But you want to wait, you want to get the best sets so you can get the most points when collecting them. And so, but the tension is, do you just go for the ones that are immediately right there in front of you, or do you kind of rush ahead down the trail ahead of everybody else and use your sticks? The game comes with these really nice sticks. That are walking sticks. Do you give up your walking sticks to zip ahead on the trail and grab the ones that are later on down the road, or do you just get the ones that are nice and cheap and easy for you right there? It's a really simple game, but really plays very smooth. Oh, I should say, by the way, I got the original version of the game that came with these, these handcrafted walking sticks. I think to get those now, you have to buy those separately, again, from Two Lantern Games, because they'll still sell them, but it's as like a separate thing, because the game normally just comes with little cardboard chits that represent the walking sticks, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with it. But it really helps the theme to feel like you're walking down this forest trail, using your walking stick, rooting around for all the right mushrooms, and then frying them up for a delicious meal. And and that's basically how you determine who's the winner. Who had the most delicious meals? That's cool, and it's sweet, it's innocent, it's charming, it's a lot of fun, it plays quick, it's a very, very tiny box. You could definitely take this anywhere. Jen and I have literally played this in a city park just on the grass, and it was just absolutely awesome. Fantastic game, Morels. That was our number 9. Number 8, Myrmes, or Myrmes, or I'm going to say Myrmes, I'm not quite sure. I think this is Latin for ants, or Greek for ants, or something like that. And this is a game where basically players control competing ant colonies that are basically have this backyard that they can swarm all over the place and and kind of do an area control thing up above ground, while below ground they are working in their own. Everybody has their own private underground ant colony. And now what this board, everybody has this board, and what it represents is all the different chambers of an ant colony that you can place your workers, your worker ants. And you only have a few of them, but you place them to oversee the larvae, to raise soldier ants, and those are the ones that go up above ground and literally claim territory for you. You can actually generate goods underground, although it's much slower than going up above and getting them. Raising the next generation of ants. So the game is it's a really, really great worker placement game with a strong sense of. Oh, it does this too. I've never done that before. That's a fun sound. A really strong sense of theme with a few really cool elements. When you're actually expanding over the world, you have like a little, you have a little chit that indicates, oh, this is where our mound is. And when you send workers from underground up above, they can actually start spreading around and claiming territory. And what they do, the way you claim your territory, everybody has all of these little hexagon pieces that represent pheromone trails. This is like a really big, expensive one that covers a lot of ground. And here's like a little short one. And you're kind of creating this maze of pheromone trails that represent land that you're kind of that is your ant colony's territory, which is where you can harvest resources that you can bring back down underground to continue to make the colony grow and thrive. That's really cool. It makes perfect sense. It's a really great distillation of how a thriving ant colony would work, but in really good, solid Euro mechanisms. There's another thing too. Over here in the top right corner of the board, there's a bunch of objective tiles, and every game is going to be different because there's different objectives you're shooting for. And the interesting thing about these is these are a big way to score a lot of points. But to score them, you have to take your core workers, your worker ants, and place them up here to indicate that I've done whatever the objective for this is, and I will now score points, and it'll go towards my final tally. But once you've done that, that worker ant is gone. Forever, for the rest of the game. And you don't have very many workers, so that can be really, really crushing. But the tricky thing is, if you're the first person to do that, any person who tries to claim that objective after you get more points. So if you're the first one and then somebody else does it, then hey, you get 3 more points. If somebody else does it, you get 3 more points. So there's this really cool tension to be the first to claim these objectives so that you will benefit from other people doing it. But if you do it too soon, you'll really cripple yourself because you don't have enough workers to actually do what you need to do and make your colony run. Really, really brilliant. Oh, and then there's one other. There's so many cool elements in this game. At the beginning of every turn, the game takes place over a series of seasons. Or seasons. And at the beginning of every season, every round is a season, you roll a die for that season, and then you check it against this die track. That represents an event that happened that season, and so it might be an event that lets you move your ants around more, or raise more larvae or whatever. And everybody has that event. But if you want to, like say you rolled a 3, if you want to spend some of your resources, you could personally change that 3 into a 4 or a 2 to get different effects and benefits that will last you for the entire year. And so that's yet another use for your very, very limited resources. The game is harsh. It's a very, very demanding game. It's constantly, when winter comes around, it can be devastating if you haven't prepared for it, in all the seasons leading up to it. But it's so rewarding and so smart and so thematic. We really, really enjoy Myrmes. Okay, so that was number 10, 9, 8. Now number 7. I do not have a copy of number 7, which is the excellent deck building game Trains. Now a lot of people would say, wait, Trains, didn't that come out this year from AEG? Actually, its American release from AEG came out in 2013, so some people might consider it a 2013 game. We got the 2012 version of the game, which was only printed in Japan, and we got one of the very, very limited copies of it. And it was easily it was our number 7. Because what it does, now unfortunately I don't have it with me, so I'll just have to describe it. I can't show it to you. It literally very closely apes Dominion. It's a deck builder. You're building decks. A lot of the cards are, have direct parallels to Dominion cards. But what it does is it takes Dominion and it adds a hex-based map of a countryside, so that while you're doing all the normal stuff of trying to get a deck that lets you draw more cards and make more money to get more victory point cards and all that stuff, you also use those cards to build rail lines all across the countryside and be the first to connect major cities and score points that way, or like kind of cut off your opponents so that they can't get where you need to go. There's a lot. So there's this whole other element on top of Dominion. Now Dominion, to this day, as far as we're concerned, is the best deck builder game there is. And so what the Japanese developers are very smart is, well, hey, let's not reinvent the wheel. Let's just take Dominion. It works brilliantly, and then just add this really cool new element on top of it, and that's what made it one of the top games of the year. Now, the reason I can't show it to you is because, like I said, I had the really, really limited edition Japanese version, which I've done a video for if you want to see. I've done a run-through for every single one of these games, by the way. All the ones I'm going to show you today, I've done run-throughs for, and there'll be links for them at the end of this video if you want to watch any of them. And at Essen this year, somebody offered to trade me my copy. God, I remember what it was. It was a really good trade. I was really, really happy about it. No, they bought it from me. They bought it from me for more than it was worth, and because it's a really rare out-of-print game. And I felt kind of bummed about having that original Japanese version because it was incompatible with the new AEG version. It was really kind of obnoxious that AEG, when they reprinted it, they gave them different card backs, so the new game and the old game weren't compatible anymore. It really kind of sucked, and I was kind of bitter about that. And so somebody offered to buy my original version. I jumped on the chance, thinking, okay, cool, now I'll pick up the new AEG version, and I just haven't gotten around to that yet. It's still an incredible game, still our number 7, but that's just why I don't have a copy of it to show. But that doesn't matter because I was more than happy to show number 11 instead, Snowdonia. But anyway, Trains, an amazing, amazing deck builder. Still not as good as Dominion. If Trains lasts as long as Dominion and has as much variety and variation with all the different expansions Dominion's done, Train may someday eclipse Dominion, but for now, Dominion is still the best. Someday I'll do a top 10 deck building game. Spoiler alert, number 1 is Dominion, and I'll explain myself more then. But anyway, that was number 7, Trains. On to number 6. The Palaces of Carrara, or the Palais von Carrara. This is a game from Wolfgang Kringer and Michael Kiesling, two very, I don't know, these guys don't get near as much credit as they should. I mean, they've been around forever. They've done a ton of really, really beloved games, but, it seems like people aren't really as aware of their volume of work as they should be. This was their big, big game for 2012, and it's absolutely fantastic. It's our number 6. Now, it's a really simple game that is all about gathering resources and trying to outmaneuver your opponents to buy the right resources at the right time to build the right buildings in the right city so you can score the right number of points. Oopsie. And it all centers around this rotating dial. Because on this dial, you'll put little blocks representing all the different building materials. And as the dial turns, the materials in any one of these spaces gets cheaper and cheaper over time. And so it's a game all about timing, of waiting for the right time. Because on your turn and on your opponent's turns, this thing keeps getting rotated. And so things get cheaper and cheaper. So do you grab it now? When what you want costs $4, or do you wait? Maybe it'll come around later, and then it'll be only $3, and you'll get them cheaper. Or if you wait long enough, things actually get to where they're almost free. But if you wait too long, chances are somebody else is going to grab it, and you need those resources because that whole timing element of trying to judge. Well, if I rotate again, maybe it's going to be okay because nobody else needs that. Somebody else needs, because you can see really what kind of colors somebody might be going for depending on, because the colors of the cubes match the colors of the cities you want to build in. Because there's also this huge amount of tension for being the first player to build, because you can only build a certain number of buildings in these cities. And so, if you really want to build here and you do everything you need to get the thing to build in this city, but then somebody else beats you to it, and then suddenly all your work is for naught, it's incredibly tense, incredibly stressful, but incredibly fun. And, so that's really, really solid. And then the other thing we really love about this game is this. Because every game, there are a series of objectives that will score you bonus points at the end of the game based on what you've done. And this just represents like a preset number of ones. It's kind of like the introductory game, that these are your 4 objectives. These are the 4 ways to score points. Or I'm sorry, the 3 ways to score points. But every time you play, there's a whole deck of these cards. So every time you play, there will be a different combination of the objectives you've got. And so, in some games, going for certain elements might be incredibly important. In some games, they might not be. So every time you play this game, it feels very, very different. With different goals, different strategies you try to pursue. But the core mechanisms always stay the same, and they're brilliant. They're so tight, they're so smooth. And this is another thing about this game, is it's so simple. You can teach this game to anybody. It's incredibly rich and deep, but the actual moves you make are really simple. Just rotating that thing, taking a tile, taking a block, which blocks you're going to take off the wheel as it rotates. Brilliant, brilliant game. Absolutely love Palaces of Carrara. On to number 5. The Legends of Andor. Now, I've already talked about this at length in my top 10 fantasy games of all time. If I recall correctly, I think this is our number 2 fantasy game, right after Dungeon Pets, which is number 1. Oh, again, spoiler alert, sorry. So, if you want to see, I've opened up the box, I've taken out the pieces, I've talked about the board, which is beautiful. This is a gorgeous, gorgeous, gorgeous game. And now, the reason we love it so much, Jen and I, we love fantasy, we love all that stuff, but normally, to have a really great fantasy board game experience, that means you're going to have to go kind of down the Ameritrashy route, where it's all about rolling dice and luck of the draw and drawing cards and reading a little story and seeing what happens. And it's more of an experience and less of a game. And while there's nothing wrong with that, Jen and I, we generally like games that, what happens in the universe happens as a result of the choices we make, not happens as a result of the card we draw that randomly says, oh, this is the story that happened. In Legends of Andor, it's all about the choices you make. And really, if anything, I would actually probably liken this closer to Pandemic than I would say Talisman, because this game is incredibly tense. You have a bunch of different objectives you have to do all over this board. You're running around like chickens with your head cut off, trying to solve the problems of the land, while all these enemy monsters are constantly marching on the center city, and they're constantly creating this huge amount of stress, in this race against the clock. And then there's also a literal clock you're racing against. So every move you make in this game is uber critical, and the cooperation between players in this game is second to none. A lot of games that are cooperative aren't really that cooperative. It's everybody just doing their own thing. In this game, you are really working very, very closely. You can engage in cooperative battles. You can get a falcon that lets you from one side of a map. If I picked up this really important potion and you need it, I'll use my falcon and it'll fly it over to you, so you can use it in the fight you're about to have. There is so much coordination between players. This game is so amazing. Our number 2 fantasy game, our number 5 game of 2012. Legends of Andor. Amazing game. Love this game so much. Oh, one other thing too, for people who say, yeah, okay, that's great, Rich, but it only comes with 5 scenarios. Won't it just like outlive its welcome really quick? Humbug, I say to people who say that, because This game comes with a set of preset adventures. But the thing is, adventure number 3 has so much random variation because it is all about, you draw all these different objective cards. Everybody has unique objectives every time you play. It's different layouts of creatures every time you play. It's different heroes using. Every time you play adventure 3, this game has as much replayability again as Pandemic does out of the box. Nobody complains about, hey, in Pandemic it's always the same 4 colors I fight. Whenever somebody says, well, in this adventure game, it's always the same 5 adventures I go through. To me, that sounds like you're saying, why is it always the same 4 colors in Pandemic? It kind of defeats the purpose. This game is epically replayable because of adventure number 3, which is designed to give you a new experience every time you play. Legends of Andor, I'm going to stop harping on it. It's an amazing game. We absolutely love it. I guess now you don't have to watch my top 10 fantasy games because I did talk about it quite a bit. On to number 4. CO2. This is a very, very heavy economic simulation where players are all running kind of modern day or slightly just one step in the future energy companies that are trying to build green energy plants all around the world in all these different regions. Because at the beginning of the game, and the game starts I think in like 1970 or something like that, I forget. Let's just pull out the board. Why not? It's actually a really pretty board too. It's it's kind of hard to get it in video, but it's kind of like this neat, kind of pastel water. It almost looks like somebody painted it with water paints. It's really, really pretty. And there's a bunch of stuff going on this board. Let's take a look at it. Right. So yeah, the game does start. It lasts from 1970 to 2020, and so over the course of these rounds. At the beginning of the game, in 1970, all these regions have nuclear and coal and oil power plants that are just obviously pumping all the CO2 and creating all the climate change. And there is this one master track that's showing how bad the CO2 levels, the carbon in the atmosphere is getting. If the CO2 levels, once you cross this little biohazard sign, you're in a lot of trouble because what can happen is that while this is a competitive game, everybody's working against each other to try to be the most successful at replacing all these old style power plants with new, with solar and, actually there's quite a few different, power sources in the game. I'm mostly remembering solar, but, there's a little bit of sci-fi. You can have fusion in here and whatnot too. But as you're working on that, we also have to pay attention to the fact that CO2 levels are continuing to rise. And if they ever get to the point where they cross that biohazard symbol, we're all in a lot of trouble because it doesn't matter how well I'm doing, how well my company's doing, if the Earth dies, everybody loses. So what usually happens, you play through probably half of this game, maybe 2/3 of this game, just competing, trying to pursue your own agenda. But then it gets to the point where things have gotten so bad that if we don't stop our competition as players, work together cooperatively, because look, we have to get rid of that last coal power plant in Africa. If that thing produces one more decade, it's going to push us over the top. I don't have time to do it. You could get it done though. But if you do that, that means I have an opportunity. And so I say, well, I'm not going to do that if you get the opportunity. And you say, well, okay, tell you what, I will not take that opportunity. I will work on this other thing that will supplement what you're doing. And so suddenly, in the middle of this huge competitive game, everything stops and you start working together like a very, very tense cooperative game. And that is amazing. I can't think of another game where that really happens. Of course, that happens in games like Diplomacy, where you're constantly having, you're working together for a while, and then you betray each other and all that stuff. This game is very, very different in that regard because we all have to work together and save the world. But while you're working together, you're still trying to work it so it puts you a little bit ahead. So that once our little cooperation phase is over, you can then get back up to full speed and get back where you're going. So it's an amazing game. I can't think of another game that does it. This is the way you do semi-co-op. Every game out there that's a semi-co-op game is wrong. And this one, which doesn't even tout itself as a semi-co-op game, is right. And I haven't even talked about, there's a lot of other stuff too. Actually, the other thing about this game is really, really interesting is the interdependency between players, because it is a multi-step process to build a new power plant over here in Europe. First, the site has to be cleared, and and then you have to get permission from the local government, and you have to do research, and it takes several steps. And the thing is, you might start building the power plant over here. Chances are you're not going to finish it. Chances are somebody else will stand on your shoulders and do the next step, and somebody else might do the step after that. And if you're denied the opportunity to take it through all the steps yourself to get the power plant, you get reimbursed in other ways for the intermediate steps. And It's really brilliant, the interplay between players when you're competing. You know, I mean, and sometimes you'll start working on a power plant with no intention of finishing it. You just kind of put it out there as bait. So somebody else will take the bait and they will finish it so that you can do the other thing that you were trying to do. It's a brilliant game. There is so much going on. Cannot recommend this enough. If you're looking for a really, really heavy business economic simulation with so much zazz, so much pizzazz. I mean, this thing elevates itself above, oh my gosh, it's amazing. CO2. And you know what? I guess if you're a climate change denier, I mean, that's fine. Just enjoy this game as, I don't know, some other kind of worldwide initiative everybody's trying to do. You know, pretend it's actually 50 years earlier and it's everybody working to try to save the ozone layer. Because everybody agrees the ozone layer was in trouble. We did all pull together as a species and solve that. So pretend it's actually the ozone you're trying to save instead of CO2 levels. You silly, silly deniers. Anyway, sorry, I didn't mean to get all political. Anyway, great game. Whether you believe in climate change or not, just an amazing economic business simulation with so many unique systems. Really stands out. Okay, on to that was number 4, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Or yeah, so, yes. I'm losing track. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4. Yes, right, okay. Number 3, Suburbia. This is an incredible game. This made it onto a lot of people's top 10s from last year. You know, I'm sure it made quite a few people's number 1 games, and you know, we love it a lot. This is a SimCity, the board game style game. You know, there's a lot of them, Urban Sprawl, The City. There's a lot of these games, and you know, more of them coming out all the time. But to this day, as far as we're concerned, Suburbia is by far the best one. It's got a lot of really interesting things going on for it. And basically what you're doing is, this board here that's in the middle of the table represents the city. And you're not building your own city, you are building a suburb of the city. So everybody sits around this thing and has their own tiles. And it's this big, gigantic bag of tiles representing all different kinds of buildings that you are expanding your own suburbs. Now that's an important conceit because everybody's fates are very intertwined in this game. You might be building in your suburb this really wonderful series of restaurants that they're renowned all over the place, and they bring you a lot of income. You know, they bring a lot of people to population, which is points in this game is increasing your population of your suburb. But then somebody else sees how well that's going, and they build a fast food chain over in their part of the world, and that suddenly undercuts you. And and so there's opportunities to cut somebody off if they're being very successful. But more importantly, and this is where the real game shines for us, depending on what somebody else builds, I might have an opportunity to build something that benefits from what everybody else has done. If everybody's built a lot of suburbs and I'm the one who builds, I forget what it is, a hospital, something like that, then I could benefit from everybody, what everybody's done throughout the game. So you're constantly paying attention because every tile you put down in your suburb has both the opportunity to affect what everybody else is doing, but also it has the opportunity to affect every tile that it's next to. Actually, there's no real board for me to show, so I'll just show the back of the board. You know, this shows somebody's suburb starting to build over the course of the game. And a big part of the game is creating this jigsaw puzzle of all these different buildings you could get. Because for instance, so you might have just picked up these apartments and you're trying to build them in your city. You have to figure out where to put them. If the player's thinking about putting them here, because for every adjacent commercial zone, that's the blue one, that is next to this thing, that increases your population by 2, because apartments and a commercial zone, they obviously coexist very well together. You need to have some place to live for all those office drones who work in that office. So they might put the apartments next to the PR firm. But you know what, they might want to put it next to this waterfront realty, because if they put it here, well, actually this is a really good spot to put it, because it will benefit from the PR firm. And this warehouse increases your income by 2 for every, this warehouse increases your income next to every commercial. Actually, this is not a particularly interesting place to put it. If instead of putting this apartment here, they put it over here, it would still have the benefit of being next to this one. It would also be next to this commercial property. So suddenly, this would increase your population by 4 because it's next to 2 commercial properties. And this commercial property, the waterfront realty, gives you an extra 2 in income for every adjacent rural area you've got. So suddenly, putting this here benefits from both these, and then this thing retroactively benefits from the thing you just put down next to it. That's really what's at the core of this game. What makes it a really interesting puzzle to solve is as your suburb grows organically, and you're always looking for these interplays between the tile you've got and the tiles you've already placed, bearing in mind how it might affect everybody else on the board too, because you might put a tile down that benefits somebody else a huge amount, and suddenly maybe I shouldn't put that tile down, because instead of putting tiles down, you can grab tiles that somebody else might really like, flip them and turn them into lakes. And so this game is hugely interactive, but not in a I constantly punch you in the face kind of a way, but in a I just have to pay attention to what you're doing and look for opportunities that will afford me. Great, great game. We absolutely love it. It's not quite a gateway game. Well, it's so simple and easy to play. I think everybody would intuitively understand how to play it, but it really does throw you into the deep end. There is so much to think about. Every tile you place is so crucial. It's a great, great game. Our number 3, Suburbia. Number 2, Escape. The Curse of the Temple. This game is awesome. The run-through I've done for this is by far the most popular run-through I've ever done because, well, this game I think probably more than any other board game comes closer to capturing the manic feel of a cooperative video game than anything else on the market. What this game is, it is a tile laying game where in real time, not in a turn-based way, but in real time, players are exploring, laying down tiles, trying to find, we're all trapped inside this ancient cursed temple, this Aztec temple, and we're trying to escape before time runs out because the whole thing is going to collapse and we'll die if we don't make it to the exit. So we have a big stack of tiles and we're running as fast as we can trying to find the exit. But we also have to lift the curse because we have all these cursed gems we're carrying around and we'll never be able to escape as long as we're carrying the curse. So we also have to find all these places where we can drop the cursed gems off, because even if we find the exit, if we don't get rid of the cursed gems first, we can't escape. And so there's this incredible tension because the game comes with a CD where it has a soundtrack with music and audio effects that lasts for exactly 10 minutes. That CD becomes the timer for the game. When the timer runs out, everybody dies. So you've got 10 minutes to work cooperatively, drop off all the cursed gems, deal with curses that pop up as you're exploring around, because you're constantly finding curses, but you're also finding items that can help you, that can find shortcuts and all kinds of things. And the way it works is, while all this is happening in real time, players are rolling dice. You've got these special 6-sided dice that have symbols for move and light your way with a torch and find keys to unlock doors and whatnot. And you're trying to roll dice to get certain combinations, because say to move from this chamber to this chamber means you have to roll a running man symbol and a torch, because you need a torch and you need to be able to run from here to here. So you're constantly rolling, trying to get the right combinations, and also while you're doing that, storing dice, because you might be ultimately heading over here where you can see somebody else has found this room and you can see, wow, we need to have combined between us at least 7 torches to be able to get rid of curse cubes in here. So as you're trying to find your way over here, if you roll torches, you're also saving them off to the side, so when you get here you've got all your torches. But as you're saving them off to the side, you have less dice to roll to get the dice you need to get over there. So there's always this huge amount of tension. And then on top of that, occasionally you will roll curses, these black skull mask things. And when that happens, your dice gets locked. And if you get too many dice locked, suddenly you're trapped and you can't move anymore. And then your teammates have to rush frantically across the board to get to you and help you lift the curse so you can move again. This game plays so fast. It's so, I'm not going to take it out of the box because really, watch my video. It was me and Jen playing one 10-minute game. Very, very exciting. Me explaining every step of the way what's going on. But wow, we love this game so much. It is so much fun. It is so hectic, so exciting. It's had 2 expansions right now, which really add to the longevity of the game. I have to admit, the game by itself, it might wear out its welcome if we hadn't gotten the Illusions expansion pack. But with the Illusions, I don't think we'll ever get tired of this game. It's just so much fun. We have played this game more than any other game we own. Must be getting close to 100 games of this by now. And it's easy because it's so quick and fast. We'll just play it anytime. Everybody we've introduced it to loves it as well. It's a great gateway game, although it's very, very hard to teach. Because it's hard to teach a real-time game that introduces so many new concepts of how you use dice and whatnot. But still, number 2 of the year, Escape, Curse of the Temple. Which leaves, there can be only one. Keyflower. Oh boy. What an amazing game. Now this is a worker placement game as well. The number 1 game of the year, worker placement. And it's all about players trying to settle the new world. A Keyflower. This is from the Keydom series of games. There's Cathedral and Keyflower and Key Market and a bunch of other games that have the word key in it. So this is playing off Mayflower. It's the Keyflower. This is one of the ships that goes from the old world to the new world and brings ship full of immigrants to this new world, where you are trying to build a society out of all of these hexes that you're laying down. And, well, okay, the central conceit, the central thing that makes this game maybe the best, the most, one of the most innovative worker placement games on the market is the fact that your workers all have two uses. You can place them on tiles to do whatever, like you've seen in a million games, like Agricola and a million others. You can place it on the lumberjack tile and that lets you generate some wood. You can place it on the mine and that generates some stone, etc., etc. But instead of using them for that, you can play, because you can see at the beginning of the game, there's all these different tiles out here. So you can place them on the tiles and just use them. But instead, you can place your workers next to the tile, and that means you are kind of placing a bid on that tile in an auction. Because what you're trying to do is, you could just use all these spaces that are out in the wilderness, but what you want to do is you want to get them for yourself and make them part of your town and part of your society, because then that means you can use them in the future really kind of on the cheap. But the interesting thing is, once you've actually added these to your own area, other players can use them too. But for them to use a tile that you have, they've got to give you their workers. And so there's a huge amount of interplay between what players are doing all throughout this game. And it's just so exciting and so tense. Where watch the run through for it. It's an absolutely amazing game. But really, the core conceit that makes it so special is the way it creates all this tension between, do I use my workers to auction to get this tile later? Oh crap, somebody else is going to outbid me. I can't get that tile anymore. Before it's gone, do I use my worker on it to at least get that resource? But if I do, I'm giving another player the workers that I need. Maybe I'll get some more workers myself, I don't know. But wow, this game is amazing. Every time we play it, it's so exciting, so tense. And it actually plays relatively quickly. With two anyway, it plays relatively quickly. We generally tend to get through this in just over an hour and a half at the most, which for us is really, really great. For something that's so deep and so heavy and so meaty and so exciting and so fresh every time you play, because of course it's different tiles. There's a ton of tiles that come in this game, and every time it's going to be a different collection of tiles. And of course everybody has their own secret objectives they're trying to pursue as well. An amazing game. That is definitely our number one for 2012. Okay folks, that's it. I'm going to wrap it up. All those games are on the screen, all here, if you'd like to follow the links to see the run-throughs for any of them. But that's it. That's our top 10 plus one for 2012. Easily the best game. So many of these games several of these games are in my top 10 period across the board. Several of them are in my top 20. Absolutely amazing year. Love all of them. Something for everybody. Great gateways, great couple games, really heavy business simulations, really great, Lords of Waterdeep, Suburbia I think is potentially a good escape, really great gateway games, real-time games, cooperative games, competitive games. 2012 had it all. An amazing year. And it kills me not to list, the other ones like Tzolk'in and Targi and so many great games in 2012, but those were the cream of the crop. Those are the ones that have risen to the top. And that's it. Thanks for watching, everybody, and keep a lookout for the upcoming top games of 2013, which will be kind of a special one. But I'll talk more about that when you see that in 2013. Either way, have a great day. Talk to you later. Have a very happy holidays, happy New Year, all of that stuff. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.